Hi, welcome back to Basic. My name is Chris Croats, and today we're going to look to answer the question, why do we have this problem in our country and in the world today? And really it comes down to two factors for me, and that is technology and impatience. First, let's tackle the technology side. And when I say technology, what I mean is cell phone use, social media, and video games. And the problem with these three is that they all release dopamine in our brains. And we're going to talk about dopamine a little bit later, but just know this now. Dopamine is a chemical that's released in our brains that is linked to our pleasure centers. It's what tells us, oh, that felt good, or oh, that tasted good. Let's do that again. And that's why you don't see people getting on social media or using their cell phone or playing a video game once. It's normally a lot of those things. And that it also explains why when we use our cell phones and when we get those notifications and when people like our pictures on social media, it feels good to us. When you get that high score or an achievement in a video game, it feels good, and that's dopamine being released in our brains. Now the problem with dopamine, it's a very useful chemical in our brains, but the problem with it is that it can become very addictive. And because this drug can be very addictive, and the fact that really there is no age requirement or training going into teaching young people how and when to use social media and video games and technology in general, we have a problem. See, what has happened is that young people today have unfettered access to this very addictive and very numbing drug that is called dopamine today, and the way that they access it is through technology. Let me use alcohol as an example. Most alcoholics find alcohol, or they start using it, when they're teenagers. And as they grow up, they start to develop a dependency on alcohol. And when life gets tough and things get them down and they get depressed, instead of turning to their friends, they turn to the bottle. Now, this time in a teenager's life, it's a time when they're going from becoming part of the tribe. They're trying to make friends. They're going to seek out the approval of their friends much more than they will seek out the approval of their parents. And as frustrating as that is for us parents, it is actually a good thing, because being part of a group, having friends, is part of growing up. And you want your kids to have people in their lives that they can depend on and that they can trust and that will help them get through life. But if they are addicted to, let's say, alcohol in our example, instead of reaching out to their friends, they will reach out to the bottle. And so they don't develop those social skills in order to get through life, because life is tough, and their way of coping is numbing themselves with alcohol. Now the same is true with technology. When things get tough and life gets hard, what teenagers do now most often is they turn to social media. They feel bad or they feel bummed out because of a test or something going on in their life or relationship, and they turn to social media to make themselves feel better. And social media works really on two fronts. Not only does it it numbs you to the world because of this dopamine, and you can get addicted to this dopamine, it also limits your ability to make and keep friends. The side effects of having a generation completely dependent and addicted to social media are crazy. Most of us millennials would admit that we don't really rely on our friends, and if something better comes along, we would drop our plans with them. Our generation has become very flaky because of this, that we don't have that connection, and we have a hard time making and keeping friends and taking relationships to deeper levels of intimacy. Because we have this generation who does not know how to cope with stress, they turn to technology to make themselves feel better. In a recent article I found online talking about a link between mental health and social media, they found that there was a 33% surge in cases of depression, talking about those who feel useless or joyless. In this time between 2010 and 2015, teen suicide attempts increased 23%. And the number of suicides that actually happened in ages 13 through 18 jumped 31%. Now, these numbers cannot be ignored, and the study found that the common denominator in all of these cases was social media. So technology is a problem. We've been advancing so quickly these past couple decades that people really haven't stopped to think, how should we deal with this? How are we to train ourselves to use these tools that we have? So technology in and of itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. Technology is a good thing. Advancing forward is a very good thing, but we need to learn how to use these tools well, because obviously we have a problem on our hands, not just with dealing with teen suicide and depression and getting addicted to cell phones and video games and social media, but we have a porn problem now, and technology is part of it. The second part of the problem is impatience. We are a very impatient people nowadays. You think about Amazon and how we have 2-day shipping on pretty much anything you could ever want. And still at times when we hear 2-day shipping, we actually are kind of bummed out that we have to wait those 2 days. That's impatience. On top of that, you think of how we consume media nowadays with streaming services like Hulu and Netflix. These people are putting out TV shows an entire season at a time, and that's why we see people, the new term called binge watching, and that's how people want to watch TV nowadays. Who wants to wait an entire week to see the next episode? You can watch the entire season in one day. And let's talk about our relationships. How impatient are we in our relationships? Dating or just finding new friends. People are very impatient these days, where you don't really need to go through this awkward stage with friends or potential romantic partners. You just find an app. You find the app that fits you. You search through the people on the app. You swipe right, and boom, you're dating and you're in a relationship. And that's how we're expected to act these days, and that's because we're really impatient. We don't want to wait for the payoff at the end. We want it now. Nowadays, you can have almost anything you want instantaneously. And that works in most cases, except when it comes to intimate relationships. Making and keeping and taking relationships to deeper levels of intimacy plays a part when it comes to pornography use. And we're going to talk about that in later videos. But this is our problem that we have today. The intersection of technology and impatience in our world. And it's bred a perfect storm for pornography use. We have technology all around us. We can access the internet almost anywhere. And we aren't patient to wait for the things that God would want us to wait for. We want instant gratification now. I'll put a link to the article about the teens and mental health and social media use in the description down below. But what do you think? How are we handling technology? Are we actually that impatient? We want to help you. We want to be there for you. If you're struggling with any of these issues, or if you're struggling with pornography use, please let us know. We want to help. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.